It should start. I pressed it. Hi. We're now going live. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Open Minds. A few technical issues this evening, and someone's kidnapped my co-host Chris. However, we'll move on. I'd like to welcome tonight Rob. Hi, Rob. Thank you so much for coming back on the show.
Oh, thank you, Gloria, for having me. And I'm glad we're able to do this today, even though I miss your partner. We'll see him next time around, right?
Yeah, we more likely will, or he may turn up at some point through the broadcast, but it's okay. And I really thank you. I know you've had a few issues, but thank you for still coming on and being. So I'm going to be easy with you. I'm going to be so easy with you. And I hope that your lovely wife and your beautiful children are all well.
Thank you. Yeah, we're all doing all right, despite the little injury I had a couple weeks ago. I'm doing all right now. A lot better than I was, so that's a
Well,
good
that's
thing.
good.
Yeah.
That's good. Well, life goes on. So, Rob, initially, what we were going to do, you were gonna channel Ardif and Trev, but due to the injury, you're unable to do that. But that's absolutely fine. So, no pressure on you. The questions I had ready to ask Trev and Ardif, I thought I'd ask you, and if you have an understanding from their perspective, share. But if obviously, if you'd rather leave it to another time to give a more accurate, then that's fair enough. Are you okay with that?
I'm absolutely ready for that. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So the questions posed are ones that I would have asked Trevor Ardif. So should we start?
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
rock and roll. Let's
Lovely.
do it.
Okay. Welcome to everybody coming into the chat. If you're looking for my co-host, he's been kidnapped. It's more likely to be ET's took him away. Yes, I've got Rob all to myself. So, Rob, here we go. From the perspective of Ardith and Treb, have they ever give you an insight or an understanding is what is this human experience we're having? For example, the way I describe my truth is I am consciousness or a multidimensional being, and I'm having this human experience, and I have a self-realization of that. So coming from them, how do they perceive this? Do you have an insight for us?
Yeah, it really depends on what time and Earth you come in and what part of Earth you come in. But
Mhm,
if we're looking at the general aspects of everything, Earth is a very special place. It's not the only place where you get to come to have resistance and get your butt kicked emotionally and mentally. But
mhm,
it's one of the places that has one of the biggest spectrums of emotional energy and just
mhm,
energy in general. So when you're coming in, they're saying a non-physical consciousness as a soul, as all of you, not just the part of us that's in our body, but like the
mhm,
higher self and the lower self put together.
mhm,
We come in with agreement to come into Earth and start, most of us, an incarnation cycle. And there are
mhm,
people who just come in for a couple lives and leave, or people they call star seeds that kind of pop in from other star systems and other incarnation cycles, but
mhm,
they join Earth to experience the entire spectrum.
mhm,
One thing that Ardif and Treb have both said is that Earth is one of the only places where you can walk out into the streets and murder someone in cold blood, and then
mhm.
walk into your home at night and give your kid the most love that you could give another human being. So you have the most cold disconnectedness and the most love all in one lifetime. And
A
Earth,
polarity, a
yeah,
massive
exactly.
polarity, a massive, which is the 3D Earth. Okay, so from on the back of that, if I asked you the question, so who am I? This being that came in to experience everything you said off the back of that, what are my components? Who am I? We've had many terminologies or labels: consciousness, dimensional beings. But from your area, or from Ardif and Treb, how would they describe who we truly are?
They describe it They use the word hierarchy, even though they don't like that term because it describes something being more than or better than.
Yeah.
There is a form of that exists with consciousness as far as the amount of consciousness. So everything connects back to one another, and it starts from way up high. It goes beyond the universe itself, but this universe is one universe out of infinite versions, right? So this universe is a universe broken down into multiple galaxies, broken down into multiple solar systems, broken down into planets. Planets are where we would be on the Earth collective, breaks into oversouls, and oversouls have hundreds of thousands, millions, trillions of different types of incarnations, and it's an evolution of incarnations. So it's elemental, and then it's animal, then it's where we're at now, transitioning out of, and then it's a connection of the heart and a higher dimension, and then connection of wisdom, then a mastery of everything. And it kind of rolls through. And even though we don't do it linearly, we experience linear because right now we're here on Earth. So we're doing linear stuff here on Earth, you know?
Wow. Wow. I mean, you're doing great, Rob. I mean, sorry, move over Treb and Ardif. Rob's doing great. It's the same. You know what I say? It's the same thing. For me, talking to you is like talking to them. I see you as them. So you're doing great. So, okay. So on the back of that, what is this reality, Rob, that we are in? Yeah, we've already touched upon it. We've come in into the 3D polarity. But have they give you a deeper understanding? Like, obviously, we know from quantum physics about energy and how matter is formed by frequency. Do you have any other understanding or perception of what this reality? I perceive it as a screen of consciousness or a movie where I am participating in it, as well as writing it, acting it, observing it. So that's just my little basic human concept. What's your truth from you?
It's the entire universe. All of physical reality is a real place. Physically we can touch it, we can smell it, we can see it, but it's a projection from the non-physical consciousness. And the reason it's a projection is because consciousness that's non-physical doesn't have feel or experience separation. So the only way you can figure out how to be separate is to create this place, divide yourself down, enter this projection, and then experience it through the vessel. And the important part of that is when you fractalize so much of yourself, by the time you're an oversoul to one human being, you cut yourself into 1/1,000,000th of pieces, and then that little tiny piece gets to experience through their own free will, which gives it an individualized experience. And by the end of all of Earth, by the time Earth burns up in the sun or just dies out, or whatever way Earth dies out in the physical reality, non-physical beings in a collective will have assimilated all the experiences ever done on Earth. And that's the joy of that physical reality, to get all of that in one shot.
Wow, that was beautifully stated. Wow, I love that. I may plagiarize that. I'm going to watch this later and write that down. So when I get asked that, I go, well, actually, I just plagiarized this from Rob. That was beautiful. Okay, so I'm going to ask you now. Obviously, you're talking to dimensional beings. Okay, I'm labeled as a lifelong ET contact experiencer. So I've had communications, physical, and all the rest. So, but coming from your understanding, who is ET? What is ET? And that's an umbrella of angels or greys or Palladians or reptilians, or it's an umbrella, concept. Who is ET from your truth, Rob?
And ET, the specific, and you're right, the terminology throws us because the communities use it in different ways. ET to me is extraterrestrial, which implies anything not from Earth. And then there's ED, the extra dimensionals, which can live on Earth but don't have to. And then there's like ultra dimensionals, which exist in all of the dimensions or above the dimensions. And all of them are consciousness oriented in a different way. So humans on Earth are third density beings, fourth dimensional beings. And in the end of their third density, beginning of the fourth density experience, which means a shifting dimensional pattern, while reptilians that also could live in Earth on a higher dimensional plane exist as extra dimensionals. And then the reptilians that don't come from Earth are extraterrestrials and extra dimensional. So you can literally take this sea of different terminology and pick and pluck whatever you want, because mostly it applies to all of them, you know?
I mean, I would love to pick off each one, but I'm going to ask just for one, who are the reptilians? Because I know of Treb. Now, you know that I've told you many times, I've heard you channel Treb, and I just fell in love with the energy of the entity. It's just the energy. It wouldn't matter what you channeled out. It's the energy. Oh God, it's just something. Oh, so could you just give us a bit more about Treb, where he's from, and anything and all of the above on Treb? Because I'm biased. Sorry, I'm biased.
Well, I am too. I think Treb's the best reptilian in the universe, so I'm right there with you. Treb is a reptilian human hybrid, and the hybrid part with human comes from the Nihal, and the Nihal are basically one of almost infinite versions of future humans who leave Earth and go to another place. The place they went to is Beta Leporis, which is a star in the Canis Major constellation, I think. And when they left there, they created their entire new race, because new planet with old human genes in the planet and the humans mix. They understood the pain and the suffering of the human condition, and also the misrepresentation of thinking that all reptilians are evil, and that caused them to create Treb's race. So they created Treb's race from their own DNA and from a reptilian animal DNA from a different system. And I can't remember if it was the Beta Leporis system or if it was Capella system, but that's where Treb's race lives now, is a Capella star system. If you look up in the sky, it's in constellation Uruguay, and I think it's the brightest star. I think it's Alpha Aurigae, and it's actually 4 stars. But if you go like zoom in, it would be from the largest of the 2 red dwarfs that exist on the 4-star system. That's where Treb and his race lived, and they're considered 5th density, benevolent, but type 1 consciousness.
Okay. Did you say, or did I mishear you? Did you say they're future humans, or?
Yeah. The Nihal.
Could you expand on that, please?
Yeah, the Nihal who created Treb's race, they're actually one who are future humans. So a small group of humans in the future, and this is multiple thousands of years in our future, actually leave Earth with this group of multiple thousands, and then exploring, find the star system of Beta Leporis. And when they go there, they find a planet there that's habitable, and they start living there, and they develop. And by then they were already 4th density. They developed into 5th density, and then 6th density. They're looking back at the trauma that they've unfolded through their own growth and evolution. And a big part of that trauma was the fear of reptilians, and fear of negativity in general, and the misassumptions of the evil that comes from reptilians. So they created a race that could be connected to humans if they chose to in their evolution, and there's Treb. So
I'm trying not to get confused.com here. Bear with me. I'm a novice at this. So it would by default be that they have come back, i.e. Treb has come back in time to you. Is that correct?
Yes. Now, this is even more confusing. Treb's race actually exists in this time strain, but it's not because they're not from the future, because this is thousands of years in the future, and then another tens of thousands of years
Okay.
for their evolution. But I can't remember if it was the Nihal or if it was Treb's race, but their whole race kind of jumped back in time just to prevent a timeline that they had where they were ended up dying from a supernova, which is
Okay.
actually kind of crazy. But they went back, and then when they did that, then they moved along. So they went way back into the past and then kept developing, and now they're caught up to the now. So
The only way that all makes sense to me, I mean, everybody who watches this or watches it on the replay, you may have to watch it 4 times, because I'm aware of the time-space continuum that doesn't exist. It's just a 3D linear timeline we're experiencing. I can sort of grasp how that would work, because I would see that at all things, at all times, in all places now. But still, I mean, wow. And you just rolled that off. You just rolled that off. The amount of knowledge you have, I'm learning. Okay. So we've all, we know how we're connected to them. We've just spoke on, obviously, I've got to go back to Trev though, because to touch upon something about the fear of reptilians, yes, we hear a lot of it. We hear a lot of it in conspiracy theories, in horror movies and everything. However, I don't think I'm the only one that when this frequency that comes through, when he talks, it is, I feel this, I resonate with this unconditional love, laughter, joy, excitement. And I actually don't even really listen to anything he says. Does that make sense to you? So obviously it was from when I first heard you that fear dispersed. I was like, no, it's not what they say it is. So obviously I'm going to say, keep, I know you will, but keep doing the Treb channeling, because for me, Treb is just the energy of this being. That would you then say on the back of that, this is what we are at this present time attaining to, that type of energy?
It's one of the possible pathways, yes, but a lot of humans, I think, will end up developing into hopefully a more benevolent type 2.
Hopefully.
Type 1 is it's a very small percentage of our universe, because the type 1 is so neutral and so understanding, forgiving, and accepting of both pathways of the positive and the negative. It's hard to obtain that. So like Treb and Ardif are both type 1, but a lot of channeled beings who you might listen to are actually highly benevolent to mid-range benevolent type 2 beings. So I think that some of us will be type 1 beings. I think the rest of us will probably end up being more hopefully benevolent type 2s and not mid-range. Like right now, we're at the mid to low range medium of type 2 spectrum. And the spectrum is huge. You have like 99% benevolent and accepting and a free will of others. And then you have, no percent where you're just completely malevolent. And humans are on like the 40 to 50% scale range, I think, towards going towards benevolency.
Well, I'm going to aim high. I'm sorry, Rob. I'm definitely going to aim high. I'm going high. I've experienced the benevolent humans, never ever from a dimensional or ET being have I had any negative experience, but from humans, my God, have I experienced. So I'm aiming high. So I'm going to ask you this question from what they've shared with you. Let's call our consciousness the higher self, the higher self. When we're playing the human, okay, when we're doing the human doings as we do in this 3D reality, what actually is the higher self doing? I mean, obviously there are many of us that are aware of the higher self and it comes through, but on a general level, to explain to the audience, what's it actually doing whilst the being is even when the being's been an arsehole or murdering, or these are the questions I get. Yeah, and you've got to what is the higher self doing on the individual limited consciousness, but obviously the higher self is expanded consciousness. What is it actually doing?
Well, to get a good idea, I think most people should understand, how big that higher self is compared to us. When they're talking about the whole being that makes Rob, that makes me, like 15 to 20% of that is in my body. The rest is my higher self. But humans are also multidimensional, which means we have a fourth density, a fifth density, and a sixth density version of ourselves too. And this is something I just recently learned from Aradif in sharing a video that we did just a couple of weeks ago. The higher self actually in all of these different layers are doing different things. There's parts of our higher self that manage, past life connections, and there's part of it that lands connection. But if you're looking at a generic idea for all of it, they're the support system for us in two ways. First, they recognize the free will, that we act upon our own things that motivate us and the things that shape us. So they support us in doing what it is that we need to do in our experience. But the other part of them is always trying to get you to go back into that level of the path that all of us agreed on when first coming here. Because, it wasn't just the 85% or 80% of my higher self that said, Rob's going to come in and channel and do this. It was all 100%. And then going into the body, we lose recognition of that. And at that level, that's when, they do that through excitements. So when you're like, I don't know why, I just wanted to do this. And when I did it, I found out this really great thing about myself and it changed my life. That's the higher self assisting and helping you get back towards your path. But the good news is a lot of people freak out in our community. They're like, what's my path? What's my journey? What am I supposed to be doing? And the answer is always, you should be doing what you want to do, because that's why you're here, to experience in general, not to be led, manipulated, or pushed to anything. And the higher self doesn't push. External entities may, they have their own agendas with whatever their excitements are, but the higher self will never push you. They just support, and they show you what path you chose before you came in, so that if you can get in that path still, then you will. And then, you have the experience you came for.
I mean, there's a point, thank you. I mean, that was clarified a lot. There was a point there that we've all spoke about. You chose to come here. I've said it many times. Many years ago, I was told this by a gentleman, and God, decades ago. And when he said to me, Gloria, you chose, and I was like, fudging did not. Why would I? No, because I was playing the victim back in the day, winning the Oscars as you do. So I have my own understanding of. Yes, I did. I'm fully aware now. It was chosen, but when we just sort of say that, you chose to come here, I understand how people resist that. And so I always try and look for other ways to give an analogy or express it, so they don't have the reaction I did at that time, because I'm sure that gentleman could have told me he could have told me in a better way, but how we just said it, you chose it, there you go, get over it, So could you expand on that part of it, that we chose to come here and experience this? Could you expand a bit on that?
Yeah, it's hard for anyone to see that. First of all, like you said, the victimization that we do to ourselves, and the perspective of being a victim, it's very easy to do that. The reason people resist is because it's hard to say, I'm the one that caused all of this craziness in my life, or pain, or suffering, or whatever. And even though there are levels of us adding ourselves to everything, Earth is also, that a highly polarized place where we can bump into other people, even if we're trying to do good, and bad things can still happen. So, choosing to be here is a part. The only way I've ever been able to explain it to everyone to know is, like, imagine, the God, because most people who I talk to about this have Christian beliefs, because mostly Christians around here.
Yeah.
So I said, imagine, you're with God, right? And you're part of him. You feel everything. You're all together in that energy. How would you experience not being together? You would have to separate yourselves into many little parts and pieces, and that's what we do. So the analogy I use different is the way I explain. But if you think about this, evolution, the way our Earth goes, even if you just think of the history books and what they tell us, the human version of our history, we're cavemen, and then we grow, and then we do. Now, this is a soul and its desire to grow. So it goes through those experiences of first just surviving, then learning how to hunt, then learning how to communicate with people, then learning to work as a group. So you can see evolution as it goes forward. You can see how our consciousness grew. But the reason, we're spending lifetimes now 80 and 90 years compared to 25 and 30 that we had then is because we have more to experience. But going back to why we chose this, or to explain to people how we chose it, there really is no good way to do that, because the resistance will be there. People I found only accept that fact when they found it through their own synchronicities, resonances, and then ends up hitting them so hard that they can't deny it. One of the good introductions to that idea, I think, I'm obviously biased with my own channeling. I think Ardif and Trevor are great. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to channel them. But most people who are beginners at that idea, Seth Speaks, The Eternal Validity of the Soul. That's one of the only books I found that I could play for people, the little 2-hour excerpt on YouTube, and say, listen to this, and this gives you an idea of the way I feel about our souls, the way we're on Earth. And it breaks it through multiple layers and gently, because it's not an easy subject. It's so complex. We could probably talk for 6 hours just about that.
Yeah.
But, it is an important thing. The only way I could say is, think about what things you've done in your life, and think, if this isn't my only life, why would I experience this? Well, you're going to have something unique here that you wouldn't have had in 100 other lives. Yeah. And that's usually the barrier, is reincarnation for most people, because that, if they're already open to that, Hinduists, Buddhists, or whoever have beliefs in reincarnation, then it's easier to explain to them why we come here, compared to the just karmic from the last life makes you do this, or whatever the belief behind it is.
Yeah, I hear you. That was beautiful again, Rob. I mean, I must say, eons ago, because I'm quite mature, ladies and gentlemen, it was the first I ever listened to was Seth, and I remember that, and I listened, come away, and then I spoke to this gentleman, and he said that, and I was like, fudge off, it's not true, and then I went back a bit, and it for me, it was a gradual, as I chose my experiences and made different choices. It was gradual, and then one day it hits you, and you just, I just laughed. I'm like, fuck, really? oh, and then boom, and that's another shift. So I wanna deviate slightly away, because you spoke earlier. Thank you for that. That was beautiful, and such clarity in articulating it. Parallel universes. Now, the reason I'm biased again. I want to ask, obviously, where I come from. So I'm asking the question, let's say, from a homosapien perspective, not as someone who's experienced self-realization. So for the audience, I had an experience a few years ago. I was just sitting in my chair, and I don't meditate. I'm not a meditator, never been a meditator. However, I do go into what I call the space, whatever you want to call it. I just go quiet, and normally nothing happens. Normally it's just an expansion, and I experienced, first of all, Rob, I saw this square, like a screen, a window, and it was so clear. And as it was coming towards me, I was in with my eyes shut. I was looking. I thought, that looks like my mother. Well, I'm a medium, so I thought, oh, dead mother, but it wasn't. And as it come closer and closer, right up close, like I was peeping in to another universe. I don't know if this is true, but this is my personal experience. I saw me, and in her reality, this is the weirdest free, and I didn't do drugs. I wasn't on drugs, and it was raining. I could see in, and she had the same hat as me, and I looked and I went, oh my God, that's me. She then turned, she witnessed me, and she was more scared of me than I was like, wow, because by then I'd experienced multiple weirdness. And then all of a sudden I shot back. Is that possible to actually peep in? I was like, that's me, but it was a different me. Is that possible?
Yeah, absolutely. Something that's fascinating. This subject becomes very complex and convoluted in a lot of ways. So I'm trying to find the best way. There are multiple levels of things that exist in consciousness that can do what you had experienced. The first thing, and the most likely, are different timelines where we experience different timelines, but that usually involves us at birth, same parents, same things. So it's an exact replica of us, but can change in multiple different ways, different parts of Earth, blah, blah, blah. Secondly, there is other universes that are almost exactly like ours, because they're infinite versions of other universes outside of our physical time-space universe. There are universes where the only difference is I'm left-handed instead of right-handed, and ones that I'm not human, that I'm just a sound wave flying through a vacuum tube of light. I mean, drastically different stuff. The third way, and this is the more complex idea, oversouls exist as a large quantity of consciousness that has multiple incarnations, but each of those incarnations only can have one focus at a time. I'm Rob right here, right now, so my focus is in the oversoul, focused on making my decisions, choosing my words, thinking the thoughts, letting it flow. But there are also versions of Rob who didn't move his hand that way, who moved it slightly different, and versions of Rob who fell off the chair. Those are probabilities. I can't reach those probabilities until I act, until I believe, until I think, and until I project myself into the next moment. So as I'm doing that, there's almost like a twin of the oversoul. And it's called, Ardif and Trevors call it the twin soul, because it represents the twin of the oversoul, and it has a different function. So instead of being where we focus our reality in to project our consciousness into a physical focus, the twin soul plays out all of those versions of Robs who didn't do what I'm doing now, who did something very close to very different. And there are infinite versions of that. And the way he describes it, if you're putting cards out on a table, the card that's in the middle is what you've chosen, what you've done in your actions and thoughts that led you. That part gets handed over from the twin soul to the oversoul to be focused on in that moment. The cards of the things that were almost exactly alike but really close are the 2 or 3 cards next. And then the ones that are, slightly different with different outcomes, those go further until the ones out on the very furthest edge are versions of us that died when we were 1, or versions of us that live in a different country, or versions of us who had a different parent. And literally the amount of probabilities are infinite. And the reason they share that with us is to teach us how to shift the version of reality we are in to versions that are more in alignment by understanding the mechanism that's there.
That's beautiful. The last part is beautiful, because I was waiting to say it wasn't until I experienced seeing me in another reality, it shifted. Well, the experience itself, so experiential, it automatically shifted my consciousness, and then shifted my, and I'm telling you, everyone's got it, you can go back and find when this happened, all of a sudden this changed, it shifted. And I'd heard, because I'd studied quantum physics 101, I was really interested in it, I mean, really interested. And I'd heard the theoretical proponents of it and possibilities, but it wasn't until an experiential interaction with it, boom. And I was like, I was literally, oh, fuck. Another one, you know, that it seems to me, I go, oh, fuck, I can't believe that. And so that shifted me again. And each time I got more excited and I was open for the next and the next. So, yeah, as I said, it's something that I've never had really, no one's ever been able to explain to me the way you have. And I'm extremely grateful. But obviously I'm on my own. Chris is not here, so I'm going to bring in all my biases. So, okay, let's jump forward now. We've got the basis of who we are, the reality we're in, and, you know, the universes. It seems, Rob, at the moment, these beings that we've spoke of have always been in this reality. We've got cave paintings, we've got scripture, we've got the history. It seems though, Rob, in present times, I know in my reality, the people I'm meeting, there seems to be more interaction. I mean, I don't know if you're finding more people coming into channeling, but coming from my area that I'm in, contact experiences, paranormal. Are you finding that in your reality?
I'm finding that more. Fortunately for me, most people who come to do a session or to watch an event, they've already been in the very specific corner of our community that is ET channeling. So they already have a lot of understanding under their belt when it comes to certain aspects of it. And one of the aspects is inner contact and then outer contact. So most of these people have done a lot of the work they needed to with clearing themselves and beliefs and stuff like that. So what I'll say is, yes, more people in general have been having more forms of contact, whether it's through, you know, deceased humans or whatever that non-human consciousnesses that are around are. But what I will say is it seems like there was a burst of physical contact around 2011 to 2015 that slowed down. And now it's starting to go back up a little bit. But I think a lot of the more benevolent races of ETs are letting us have a little more room to get our shit fixed, you know, to work on the human part of it. At least the ones that are, in my opinion, are the kind of more caring ones, because they know we've got a lot of human stuff we've had to deal with. So I think it's finally starting to go back up after seeing a few years of it being much less, at least personalized in the community for people who were having contact and then slowed down for them. At least the examples of people I've met.
Yeah, I mean, I'm seeing that. However, I'm also seeing, it's just from my truth, my reality that I'm in. Obviously, being a contactee and physical contactee and all the rest way back, it's changed. The contact is changing. And I don't like this word, but I have to use it for the general understanding. It's more now of conscious downloads, knowing. It's as before, it would be more physical, or you'd be with them and there would be, I don't know how to explain that part. Well, I haven't got time, even if I wanted to, and it's more awareness and knowing. You feel the energy, you know the beings there, because if you're a contactee and experience of these beings, the energy is the first thing in your gut. It's my gut, and it comes in. So I'm aware of what type of energy is coming in, but it doesn't seem to be so much on the physical interaction now, because I'm aware now that they just put on the form of the physical to maybe, I don't know to use the word, make it more 3D for us to start to connect. But now there doesn't seem, for my truth, to be the physical shape and form. It's the energy. Would I be correct in that?
Yeah, that's my similar experience with people who've communicated with me. My contact has always been non-physical. I've seen crafts before. I've seen them close, but I've never physically interacted that I can remember. I know that there are some things I don't remember. But I've noticed the opposite happening in non-physical contact or dream state, meditation, astral projection contact. That's exploded for the last 5 years. Just every year, more and more people are getting that.
So that's obviously our consciousness, our Homo sapiens, sapien consciousness, we could then say on a positive note, is expanded, is evolved. We've evolved to the extent where we're sort of, I would say, permeating with each other. It's for them, their growth as well as our growth, but we're going more in the one. So I want to take that into the last segment here, is looking at what's happening to us now. You spoke about the more of the benevolent, which I'm fully aware, and I've also experienced, and I share in the groups I'm in or my other podcasts now. It's about, I call it deconstructing the human experience, working on the beliefs, the concepts, the ideas, all of the human traits, because basically we're not human per se, we're dimensional beings experiencing. And I've also found with these beings, they're like, it's like they switch something on, that you can start releasing the guilt, the shame, the judgment. Would you agree that these beings are assisting in that way, or is it just the higher self doing it? Which way do you think?
It's actually both. You know, the higher self is always doing that as a job, but the higher self, just like us, sometimes needs tools. My higher self was calling to me for years, and I never knew it, through my drug addiction, through all the resistances in my life. But when Trev came, I could not ignore that. And the higher self knows that if I meet Trev, then that's going to open that part up for me. So the higher self can use guides that we have that aren't part of the higher self, but are connected deeply to that part of us as the tools we need to expand. And also sometimes just beings who are in alignment, either with our soul family or over beings that actually are in the oversoul, like Ardif and Trev are for me, beings who could be my future versions. Sometimes they just feel your energy and they're like, yep, I like that guy. I like that lady. I like that person. And then connect with you in such a strong way. It's almost unavoidable, you know? And sometimes they have an agenda behind it. Like Trev, his agenda is to connect to as many beings as possible, learn as much as possible, and share as much of what he knows as possible. That's a benevolent agenda, but it's still an agenda. So people are mindful of that nowadays, which I think is good, because discernment, and that's why the higher self, connecting with that first, in my opinion, is always the best, because they help you feel out which of the energies are useful and which ones are less useful.
Yeah, I mean, that was beautifully said. I mean, on a personal level, I've experienced that, but I'm hearing of many others. And even when they don't physically see what they would, what we would label an ET or dimensional being, they're aware of the energies, but then all of a sudden they're aware of the work that they're doing on themselves, and they speak of it, and which to me is beautiful. So I keep saying that the consciousness is expanding. This is because what we need to do is deconstruct the Homo sapiens sapien. We are not that, we're not that, we're not that. And that I think ultimately lives to, for my truth, and doesn't mean it's the right truth, it's just my truth, that it awakens you to a self-realization. And when you have the self-realization, it doesn't make you better than anybody else. Then you realize, oh my God, Rob's that too. And, you know, he's that too, and she's that too. And then things just unpeel. The judgments, the biases, and you no longer, it's just, you're free. It's like free. Would you, does that resonate with you, that sort of expression?
Yeah, every fiber of my heart resonates. The ability to understand yourself is the most essential thing in your spiritual journey. Once you
Yes.
do that, you will always take notice of those who are on similar levels or
Yeah.
at least on the same path as you.
Yeah.
And what I've realized for myself, again,
Mm-hmm.
my truth, which is
Mm-hmm.
exactly like yours, is
Mm-hmm.
once you find that part of yourself and
Yeah.
start finding other people, there
Yeah.
is no need for judgment anymore. And I'm not saying I don't judge anyone. I'm
Yeah.
saying I've learned how to judge much less in an attempt to
Mhm.
always not judge as
Yeah.
much as I can, because you can never really understand others. Trev and Art have always said, this is your reality specifically. And
Yeah.
in your reality, you'll meet others who are also in their reality, but every person you draw to you is there for a reflection of something needed
Yes.
inside. So each
Yeah.
time I'm like, look at that asshole,
Yeah.
they think Republicans and Democrats should be
Yeah.
blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
just a part of yourself that you're screaming
It's
at.
that, I totally agree. I totally agree. It's like, I remember many times, like, why does this keep happening? Why that fucking arsehole keep doing? And then click. I'm looking in the mirror. It's not them. It's only ever about me. It's my reaction. It's so, and it's not an easy job. And I always say, Rob, I hear people say, oh, I had a dark night of the soul. And I always say, piss off. I had decades of the dark night of the soul. Oh my God, because
Dark decades.
decades and decades of it. And but then what happens is when that arises and then finally you take responsibility, that's just my truth, it dissipates and you think, I did it. And you know what happens? Something else comes along. Oh no! But then you realize, then you have an understanding of actually it's you doing this. I'm writing the script, I'm picking the actors, I'm playing the part. And when you have that understanding, it's a lot easier than when you're playing the victim and poor me, they did this to me. However, I would like to put it to current times. Now, this is just my truth. At this time now, I have a perception. My truth is that I sense timelines coming in to the one, the now. I can't articulate something because it's I can't find the words. So I'm going to do the best I can. I'm fully aware of myself in other timelines. I'm fully aware of who I truly am, and I'm experiencing. It seems to me my reality is all timelines coming into the now, the one. And I use another analogy is if you imagine a being, a holographic being that fractalizes out. So I suppose I'm talking about my higher soul, whatever you call it. And you've got shards, and in every single shard is the one, and it's coming back, coming back, coming back. Do you have anything similar to that? Because I still looking for people that have something similar that I can maybe expand upon and have more knowing of. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it does. I haven't had that experience myself. I've heard a lot of people say that the parts of themselves, like a soul retrieval on a large scale, but
Mm.
like a massive scale. I
Yeah,
personally, excuse me, I personally haven't had that experience, but I have had an experience, something that sounds similar. Um, More of my higher self comes into my body. You know what I
yeah,
mean? So
yeah, yeah,
uh, integrating and changing dimensions, it becomes a part about integrating as much of your higher self as possible,
yes,
which I think would feel for a lot of people like having parts of their soul that's missing,
yes,
because
yes,
that part isn't part that we've connected with before. That
yes,
part knows so much more than we know.
yes,
So that is very much activated in me and a lot of people I've
yeah,
seen.
yeah,
Um, and the integration of more of the higher fractal consciousness and higher self, I
yeah,
definitely feel like that's probably what you're talking about. And if that's the
Yeah,
case,
it
yes.
is. It's exactly. You just articulate it better than I. You see, and I knew you would. I mean, I
I've been
also
hanging out
see.
with Trev and Ardif lately.
Well,
They
yeah,
use all this
you've been
terminology all
hanging
the
out, and
time.
I haven't been hanging out with Trev. I'd love to hang out with Trev. Careful
Oh.
what you wish for. Careful what you wish for. Yes, I know, Rob, I know. I also see that in the 3D reality, that experience on the micro, which is like me, but on the macro, which is what you were speaking about. So I'm experiencing the dimensions, and so it's like well, I suppose it would be in a 3D polarity dual experience, the micro and macro, but they're coming in as one now. So they're permeating each other. I find it so hard to articulate what I experience. So, but you understand what I'm speaking on, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. It's integration level of so many different knowings right now. I think too, a lot of people, because we've been in this fourth density energy for a long time. It's just the individuals that are catching up to where they need to be at for a fourth density level.
Yeah.
So more and more people are also brushing through the threshold of dimensionality, of density, of evolution. And when they're doing that, they're also picking out alternate versions of themselves. They're picking out future timelines. They're picking out parts of the twin soul that they never quite mixed with or connected with. And I think the integration of multiple levels of that, people are really starting to feel the multidimensionality inside of themselves,
Yes, yeah. And I think it's beautiful. Could we close on, no pressure on you, obviously. One of the biggest beliefs humanity has is the belief in fear. From my truth, fear is an illusion. It's a thought and a process and a concept. And if you believe in it, that's okay. So we've all, many millions of beings on this planet have different analogies and formulas how to overcome fear. Obviously, in my case, the way that I overcome the fear of death, because it's normally death. We have all little fears like, what if Rob doesn't like me? What if Rob doesn't come on? It must be nice to Rob. So that's a fear of loss and lack. But however, not that fear, the fear of death. And the only way that for my experience, it was just this way. And I know it's different for everyone else. Mine was, I had what one would deem, I had more than one actually near death. It took them 3 times for me to get it, to go to that place, and then boom, it opened. So I lost the major one of the fear of death, and then I've been working for hundreds of years now on this, all the little bits, if someone doesn't like me, my reputation, the fear. From your truth, could you give advice to anyone who's trying to work through the fear of death? Because when we have we don't even sometimes realize it's a fear of death. It's in the subconscious until something comes up and it rises and we push it down. Do you have any guidelines or analogies how to overcome, to start deconstructing and working on this fear of death? No pressure, Rob. No pressure.
Yeah, no. It is. It's one of the biggest questions out there. First of all, defining fear is important for most people. And the way I define it, the way Trev and Ardif have taught me, and what resonates with me is that there are 2 emotions, 2 vibrations, 2 things in the universe altogether, and that's love and fear. And the love is a connection to something, and fear is a disconnection from something. So when you're thinking about fear itself, you have a disconnect with death, and that's because you've seen other people do it and not had a chance to do it yet. So you don't know. It's unknown to you. Here's what I say to people who fear death. And most people fear death because one of a handful of reasons, but the most of it is I don't know what happens. I don't want to be wrong about what happens with death,
Mm-hmm.
or I don't want to fade away into nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. First of all, the fade away into nothing, we can almost discount that completely. Even if you're an atheist, a logical person, think about every religion that's out there. The one thing that every religion can actually agree on is that the soul is not finite. It doesn't die off. It doesn't just cease to exist. It literally is an infinite thing that lasts forever. So right off the bat, we can find some relief with that. Most people worry that after they die, they lose themselves. They lose their identity, especially people in our community where we're going to ascend. If we go back to oneness, we won't be who we were. We're just going to be, that's not right either. You're not less of something. You're actually exactly who you are with more added to it, with better insights, with more perspective. And that's not a bad thing either. And the last thing, when it comes to fear, the way I work it out, because I have a fear of death still in small parts, but it's to who I would leave behind and how well they're taken care of. So if we put that aside, the way that I disconnected fully from the fear of death and still have just this little part instead of having all of it was the recognition that, well, first of all, the way I got to that fear to dismiss and disconnect was going through a process that Treb called me. It's called the 10-step belief system process. Now, it's called the 10-step belief system process because Ardif got his hands on it, and him and Kalina went back and forth a million times until they figured out a formula that's useful for everybody. But Treb taught me this tool, and basically it's a self-awareness tool to find out what belief systems you're working on. And my belief systems that were involved with death had to do with all those things we talked about. What if I'm wrong? What if I don't know? What if I just turn into nothingness? And I had to work on those. So deconstructing as a tool, the 10-step belief system is a good one, and it's free, and it's so good we wanted everyone to have it. That's why we gave it for free. So using this is basically a process where I'll explain it in the shortest way possible. You color your fingernail or wear a piece of jewelry on your hand or something that you can see every day, and that reminds you to be mindful. Then when you start feeling a bad emotion, negative thoughts, you're aware that you need to stop whatever you're doing and then go back in your mind and trace back all your thoughts. And, you know, it's like, hey, I'm walking a dog and the dog pees on something and it made me think of a childhood thing. And then that made me think of my parents, and that made me think of my dad. And all of these thoughts that snowball in our head, that fingernail color reminds you to keep awareness of your thoughts. And also that when you get that emotion, trace it back. Usually when you trace back, you'll find the triggering thought that created the first part of anxiety, the first part of disconnection. Then you ask yourself, what about this topic is creating this emotion in me? And start working back that thought. It's a beautiful tool. It's more complex than that. But I highly suggest that for everybody because it really gets you down to the root of the thing. Another short answer is that there's really no way to deconstruct it for everyone because everyone's so different with so much traumas. It's usually finding your traumas in your past, the reason why you believe stuff, and deconstructing those that gets you across line, not just for death, but almost every fear.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, I was going to, before I say where they can view these 10 steps, we'll do that in a second, is I totally resonate with that, even on the fears. So that's why obviously now, you know, I use an analogy. I've got an orange. Everyone knows my analogies. And I cut it in half and I gave half an orange to Rob and half an orange to me. And we both experienced eating an orange. However, we both experienced it totally differently with different responses, reactions. So being fully aware, I always seek to find different analogies from others to share because, you know, some may not resonate with me, but they may resonate with you, or they may not resonate with you and they'll resonate with someone else. There's a whole point of us getting out there, of having this conversation that, well, you know, what the way Gloria says, no, it doesn't work, but I've done them 10 steps, that works. For me, my heart's open for that. So, Rob, before you say, well, they can all connect with you, I thank you, love you so much for coming back on today. I'm sorry, you just put, as much as I love Trev, you just put him out of business, okay? He's just for tonight. He's going to be well proud of you, because there was nothing. And I took you deep and I gave you complex questions because I knew you had it in you. I knew it was in you. And not that we don't need Trev, but you know what I'm saying. It's Rob. It's Rob Scott. Well, you are Treb. I always say you are Treb. Treb is you. I can't see the difference between you. So, Rob, now I said that, where can any of our guests, or when they watch the replay, they want to get hold of these 10 steps or to learn more about you and what you're doing, where can they get hold of you?
Same place you can go. My website is etwhisper.com. And if you go to the website, there's a tab on the menu and it says events. And when you hover your mouse or your finger, you tap it on the phone, there's a drop down menu, go to free events. And when you click free events, the 4th video down, or the largest video that's in there, is the 10-step belief system event that we did for free several years ago. When you watch that, it's 3 hours or 4-hour videos, so it's a lot to take in. Kalina was good enough to write a PDF worksheet that goes with it. And that's directly below that video in a paragraph in a hyperlink. And if you download that PDF, you can print it out or use it on your tablet and just work the 10 steps without having to go back and reference the video 1,000 times. It's no way anyone can watch 3 hours 100 times and actually let it sink in. But to see it in front of you, it's all right there. And that's where you can go visit all my work. And the video that has that is my YouTube channel where you can see all the videos. So
beautiful. Thank you so much, Rob. Just hold in there. I'm just going to say thank you for everyone who's watching this evening live or on the replay. Please like and share, and please follow Rob on his website. Next Sunday, hopefully whoever kidnapped Chris will return him or not. Next Sunday, we have an amazing, amazing, amazing lady, Erin Montgomery. And it's 6 p.m. UK time next week. I'm not going to say any more about Erin. She is and I want you to hear it for yourself. I don't want to spoil it. It's a big surprise. She is absolutely a beautiful, beautiful soul, an experiencer, and has a lot to share with the audience, especially us in the UK. We tend to be cut off quite a bit over here. Rob, once again, thank you very much. And to our audience, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next week at 6 p.m. Bye for now, everybody.
Thank you, Gloria. I appreciate it.
You're welcome, sweetie.